Hello, my name is Jonathan Coxall and I'd like to welcome you to the Macmillan Study Skills video lessons. There are 5 video lessons in this series and each video lesson has one of these, a PDF worksheet which you can download from the Mondadori website. The 5 video lessons are developing study skills, grammar study skills, vocabulary study skills, listening and speaking study skills and reading and writing study skills. Let's take a look at the first one. Developing study skills. So this is the first in the Macmillan Study Skills series. This is developing study skills. Let's have a quick look now at what we're actually going to be looking at in this video. Firstly, what are study skills? Then we're going to look at how we can improve our memory, how we can improve our study skills in general is the third point, and then finally the difference between mind maps and concept maps. So let's look at a few ideas for study skills. What are study skills? Study skills are those skills which you need to study more efficiently. If we look at what the study skills are, let's have a look at the slide, for example. If we underline or highlight those words which we have most difficulty with, when we're doing a reading text, perhaps we need to skim or scan depending on what information we're actually looking for. When we're actually faced with a new reading text or a listening text, it might be an idea to try and predict, based on the images or some words that we've seen, which we already know, we can predict what the text is about. But there are a couple of study skills which I think very few people do, but they are very, very important. Firstly, have a clear objective. That's the most important thing. If you don't have a clear objective, it's very, very difficult to know where you're going. And secondly, set yourself a time limit. Decide how long you're going to study and set that time limit. Right, let's move on to the second slide. So how can we improve our memory? Let's look now at a graph which shows how we can actually improve the way we study. If we look here, we can see that recall or memory is on the left, and then we have the start and the end on the bottom. Let's start by looking at a study period. If you think about studying, the first thing that you do, in this case, is called primacy. You're more likely to remember the things at the beginning of a study period because they're the first things you do. The next thing is very important. It's when either understanding or misunderstanding can take place. If you don't understand what the lesson's about, then perhaps it will be a good idea to make sure you ask the teacher or you look at another book or find a way of understanding what you're actually going to be looking at. The third point that I think is important to make is something called the von Restorff effect. The von Restorff effect was or is those moments during a lesson when suddenly something sticks in your mind or an association is made or something grabs your imagination, and that is the von Restorff effect. You're more likely to remember that. Then we have, throughout the study period, a series of associations. You're making associations with things from other languages, things from other subjects, from whatever, from your life experiences. And those associations are key to memory. Then finally, at the end, we have the recency effect. The recency effect is when essentially the last things that you study are stuck in your mind because they were the most recent in time. If we use this graph and think about this graph, if we have a 5-hour period in which to study, is it better to have one long 5-hour study period, or maybe to split it up into periods of 50, 60 minutes, allowing us to have more primacy and more recency effects? This is key when studying. Okay, on the graph before we saw how we can improve memory. Let's now look at how we can improve our study skills. Firstly, you must be systematic in the way you prepare. Secondly, I would always try and follow a timetable. Create yourself a timetable at the beginning of each week, knowing what you've got to do, and follow it. Plan well. Plan everything that you need to do, think about what you need to do, and make sure that you allow enough time for each thing. Get organised. If you know that you're going to be doing English homework, make sure that you've got your English dictionary with you. Or if you're going to be doing Latin, you might want your Latin dictionary. It's key to get organised, otherwise you just waste time when you're actually studying. The next one is a bit strange, but I think it's important. You've got to believe in yourself. If you don't think you can do it, you probably won't, because you already are telling yourself that you can't do something. Believe in your own capabilities. You can do it. And then finally, it's really important to learn from the mistakes that you make. We're going to talk about taking and keeping a record of the mistakes you make, but this is key. Language learning is about making mistakes, but it's also about really learning from those mistakes. In this slide, we look at long-term memory and how you can transform short-term memory into long-term memory. Scientific research shows that in actual fact, once you've studied something, maybe in class, and taken notes, what you can do is then maybe look at it again 2 or 3 hours later, then again a day later, again 2 or 3 weeks later, and so on and so forth. This is key because every time you look at it within the time limits given, you will notice that you actually remember quite a lot more than you actually expected. So remember, when you're studying, always plan in time to look at what you've studied in the past again and again and again. 2 great tools for studying are mind maps and concept maps, but they can be used and are used for very different purposes. Let's have a look now at the main differences between those two. Mind maps essentially use images. A mind map is a pictorial diagram of what you need to remember. They use colour, the idea being that the more colour you use, the more attractive something is and the easier it is to remember. The idea with mind maps is because they are in colour and use pictures, they help memory. Long lists of words are very difficult to memorise. Mind maps, because they're in colour and with images, help your memory. The downside of mind maps is that they do take a long time, so beware. If you're going to do a mind map, make sure that you've allowed a sufficient amount of time. Concept maps, on the other hand, help you to organise in a very, very simple and quick way. They help you to plan if you're going to be doing writing activities or if you're going to be doing any studying. They help you to plan what you're going to do. They're quick and they're very easy. This makes them incredibly versatile and they can be used for a whole variety of studying. So let's have a little look at mind maps in greater detail. Imagine I was going to draw a mind map of myself, just to give a little presentation of who I am and what I do. Okay, my name is Jonathan, as you know, and I was born in a town called Eastbourne, which is in the UK. Now, how might I want to depict that? We've said that mind maps are about pictures and images. So, if we're thinking about the idea of where I was born, I may want to draw the baby's crib. The idea of being born is depicted like that. I've said to you that the town where I was born is called Eastbourne, and so I may want to highlight the east in a compass and then add the idea of me being born. That way I can remember with greater ease the word Eastbourne. Then if we think about where Eastbourne is, we might want to draw a little map of the UK or of England with the place where I was born depicted. So that's the UK and Eastbourne is here on the coast. Now, what about what I do? As I said, colours are very important. So if we're thinking about what I actually do, I might want to draw a teacher's hat because that's what I do. I teach. So if we want to know a little bit what I do, I teach. And what do I teach? Well, I teach English. So why not draw a little map or a little flag which shows exactly the language that I teach. Okay, so that's what I teach. And where do I teach? Well, I teach in Milan. So if we want to depict Milan, maybe we'd want to draw a picture of the Duomo, just to remember that that's where I teach. And so there we have it. As you can see, what we have here is a presentation of who I am in images. I'm Jonathan. I was born in a town called Eastbourne, which is in the south of the United Kingdom. And I'm a teacher, and the subject that I teach is English, and I teach in Milan. This, through the use of images, is much, much more memorable than as if we were to write the words and leave them like that. Mind maps help if you have time to develop them. If not, then let's look at perhaps ways we can use a concept map. Okay, concept maps serve a different purpose. Imagine we have to write a letter, or in this case a report. What we need is to get an idea of what we have to include in this report. So the first thing that we have to do is to include a title. The concept map helps us to get a very, very clear picture right from the beginning of what we need to include. So in this case, we're writing a report. It could be a report on anything. We need to include the title at the beginning. Then we have to look at the introduction. Then perhaps we might want to include current, or if we're looking at a report, for example, on a recreational facilities or on a sports centre, we might want to include something about the current facilities. Then perhaps we would want to give an opinion. So it's always a good idea to get that right from the beginning. And then finally, perhaps some recommendations. Okay, so as you can see, we already have a very clear outline for our report. What then we can do is to develop each one if we need to add extra information. This gives us a very, very clear structure on which to work. We're going to look at this a bit later in the writing video lesson, so don't forget to have a look at that and see how we develop, for example, the use of paragraphs. I hope you enjoyed the first in the Developing Study Skills series. The next series we're going to be looking at developing grammar study skills. Look forward to seeing you then.